Now, before I begin, I will answer the question that is probably on many of your minds. How is it that a black American with exciting and interesting hair who studies economic policy is qualified to come here to Riga, Latvia and tell you about the Latvian economy and education system? And that's a good question. Well, the answer lies somewhere in the past, in the 2000s, and is a personal journey that started when I was a student in college. Three things were happening. Robert Mundell, a famous economist, won the Nobel Prize for his work in the policy that led to the euro currency. Second, the world was reeling from the default of the Russian ruble in 1998. And three, I joined a book club in college to impress a college crush. And the book that we read was Slavenka Draculas' Cafe Europa, Life After Communism. Premise was pretty simple. It said that in most Eastern European cities after the fall of the Soviet Union, you could find a Viennese Western European cafe, a Cafe Europa. And the cafe was Western European from the place settings to the type of coffee served. But while these cultural outposts had arrived from the West, few other cultural attributes would follow. And while the East lie in wait of the West, resources, workers, and opportunity flowed across Eastern borders westward. Now, I'm not sure how many of you like math, but it created a pretty simple equation for me. Professor who was a big deal in European currency markets, a story about a major country adjacent to Europe having a currency crisis, and a book that talked about the intricacies of post-Soviet social life and an economy, all equaled for me a burning desire to study post-Soviet economics. And that's what I did. I began by studying workers and economies and labor markets, and then I began to do comparative analytics between Russia and Soviet economies and then the United States economy. Now, around this time, the US was having an awakening and tons of money became available for education and labor research there. And so I kind of transitioned back to the US and started focusing on the development of workers there. I worked to connect workers to career opportunities in factories and manufacturing. I worked to study labor markets at a policy think tank, and I joined the Harvard University as a strategic data project fellow to look at career and technical education outcomes. It was around the same time that I met my first Latvian friend. Now, a flatmate from Columbia University, we would stay up many hours talking about life, politics, identity, and culture. And all those conversations came with the cast of visiting Latvians to our flat and others from the Baltics, and culminated in my very first visit to Latvia. Now, visiting Latvia was wonderful for a number of reasons, but among those reasons, the most exciting part was that I was able to meet, accidentally, both the Minister of Economy and Minister of Education and Sciences at the time. Now, both ministers were terribly gracious and talked to me about my work and challenged my policies and challenged my assertions and asked questions and talked about what it was really like doing the work in real time. This fueled my interest and a desire to learn more. And in a way, coming to Latvia was a coming home for me, because it was the first time that the two halves of myself could be joined. The younger economist who studied post-Soviet economies and the now seasoned education researcher combined in a single topic. So while I admit I'm not Latvian and have no degrees from the Latvian education system, and my attempts to study Latvian have led to about a vocabulary of 200 words, I can admit that there is an angle through which I do feel qualified to talk about this, and that is through the following three lenses. One, what have been the pain points that I have seen and experienced during my time in this work? Two, why does it matter and why should we care? And three, what, if anything, can be done to change or make a difference? Now, on to the first pain point that I've experienced. Everyone wanted to talk about rural depopulation in Latvia and what that impact is. Now, what that means is that people are moving from the countryside to cities at high rates. The graph behind me shows that there is a 5 to 10% decrease in the number of people who have left the countryside and moved to cities the last decade. So what we realize is that as cities get more crowded, so do the schools in the cities. And that means there's less funding for students and less money to guarantee higher education outcomes. As a result, people have tried to put in the solution of letting the money follow the students. So as students leave the countryside, so does the money. And there's less money there. So what that means is that those communities sometimes become destabilized, right? That means there's less money for books and supplies, less money to pay teachers. Some teachers have been let go. An expose found that some teachers were working to pick fruit and work on farms in the countryside, even though they were highly qualified. Also, there is fewer workers being introduced to those communities with degrees who have high skills and can contribute to those economies. It is what is called an efficiency gap, where this A at the bottom is where countryside schools have fallen from the gap of what's happening in cities in the ideal education space. So this is a challenge that isn't just happening in Latvia, it's happening throughout the Baltics. But as Evita Puriņa writes in her article, Island of the Poverty-Stricken, the least prosperous pupils are concentrated in schools in the countryside. The gap in prosperity between children from the city and the country is one of the largest in Europe and continues to widen. Now, it could be easy for us to say this is a challenge that our politicians should solve. If we look at the graph behind us, we'll see that in all subjects across categories, that people in urban areas tend to perform higher than students in the countryside. But this isn't something we can blame on politicians. This is a natural tension. If you're a local politician, you want to keep dollars in the community. If you're a national politician, you want to efficiently educate all students. Makes sense. This is actually part of a larger trend that's global, known as brain drain. Now, what is brain drain, you ask? Brain drain is when people move from one area to another for better economic opportunity. Now, it doesn't sound as morbid as someone literally draining our brain from our head, but it's not so great either, right? So this isn't just something happening in Latvia. It happens all over the world. In the United States in the 1990s, the city of Philadelphia had such high crime that people moved to New York City and Washington, D.C. in droves. Similarly, the IMF ranked Iran as one of the top countries for brain drain in the world, estimating that it loses about $50 billion a year because of brain drain. Now, what are some of the reasons for brain drain in Latvia? Now, obviously, the 2008 economic crisis hit people hard, and Latvia rebounded well, but at the time, there were people who started to look outside of the country for opportunities. For example, teachers saw their salaries decrease on average 50%. Similarly, the population of Latvia between 2008 and 2018 decreased about 12%, says Mihails Hazins. Also, the OECD, the Office of Economic and Cooperative Development, says that the decrease of Latvians leaving, 70%, have been 35 and under. That means that they are working age. And out of that 70%, about 40% of them have been returning, and that was in 2014. Today, the number is about 35% returning. So why is this problematic? Well, it has implications for the workforce, obviously. You'll see that the people leaving are people of prime working age. So what happens when you have an economy where you have fewer workers? Well, you have an aging economy, and you have less talent filling in, which means it's harder to attract international business. Did you know that in 2017, 8,000 more Latvians died than were born? So what that means is that not able to attract international business, not able to set up corporations that are industry leaders, well, there's tourism dollars, right? But an economy that serves tourism and looks to serve those coming in with international dollars is not one set up to create leaders in science, technology, engineering, and the arts. Maybe we'll say, why not just solve the problem, have the politicians decide? Pick one or the other. Either they should agree that we're going to leave the money in the countrysides and let the municipalities decide, or let the money follow the students. Well, consider either of those. If we leave the money in the countryside, well, we'll continue to get the same results. Scores will be lower, there'll be less money in cities, overall education outcomes will decrease, and that will lead to social challenges. We'll be less able to recruit business, and the GDP will decrease, and there'll be less money overall in the economy, which will have economic impacts that are devastating. So let's consider the other option. Well, in the alternative, we let the money follow the students. That's the efficient approach that many economists have advocated for. Now, while this has benefits, think of the challenges. Not everyone will be able to move to a city, right? So some of those communities will become destabilized. And as they do, there'll be a certain group who become so destabilized that they'll continue to need more and more social resources, which will require more spending from the government to take care of those in the countryside. And it will mean that possibly more taxes. But at any rate, it could create a social condition that will cause those in the cities that are well educated to leave Latvia anyway. So this is about a 15-minute speech. We're not going to solve that challenge here today. What we can do is work towards coming up with solutions and ideas that allow us to work towards mutually beneficial outcomes and addressing the root cause, which is, how do we manage to keep talent in Latvia? Well, here's what we can do. Support rural communities. Think of churches, art festivals, music festivals, fairs, and send money, support them, attend, send supplies, tell family members in the countryside to go. These are places where people get vital emotional and social support that if schools close, they will be able to turn to continue to get those supports. Help professionalize the teaching profession. A recent survey showed that 50% of teachers in Latvia don't feel respected in their professions. A similar percentage said that if they had to choose a career again, they wouldn't choose teaching. So writing a teacher a letter, telling them what a great job they're doing if they were your teacher or your child's teacher, inviting them to your office to talk to them about how they're educating students for the future to do the type of work you do, helps them feel like a valued partner. Consider becoming a mentor. Having a mentor is a wonderful experience for a young person. Seeing someone as a respected professional in their community can allow them to make that person a role model and have the goal of becoming like that in their future, rooted in a community. Positive education experiences lead to lifetime investments in those communities. Did you know reading to a student aloud once a week has impact on their future earnings? Become an advocate. Learn what policies work and advocate for them. Oslo Metropolitan University, along with University of Latvia, did a study that showed there are ways to improve schools in the countryside. One, by making them multi-purpose and not just focus on academic education, you can provide community skills and social skills. Two, training teachers to teach multi-grade classrooms so they can handle students with multiple grade needs at the same time. And three, having the schools be economic communities where there's development and students can work to grow and develop their community and vocational skills at the same time. And finally, become an advocate and a supporter of organizations that train teachers. Or consider becoming a teacher or principal yourself. Or at the very least, encourage somebody that you know is talented to do so. Now, I work at Teach for America and the United States, and I'm super proud of the work that we have done to make sure that all students have an opportunity to have an excellent education. And similarly, our partner organization here, Mission Possible, does the same to provide a quality education to all children of Latvia, developing their skills and motivating them for lifelong learning. Under the umbrella of Teach for All, we work with 43 other organizations across the world to do this work. In closing, I would ask for us to consider 3 commitments. One, consider both sides of the argument. If you have an opinion, state it, and then consider the other side so we have empathy and mutual understanding. 2, think of that list of 5 things I said, pick one, get involved. Even if you do it for a little bit, it will make a difference. 3, recruit a friend. Find a colleague, tell them about this talk, and ask them to get involved. The future of Latvia is bright, and there will be unparalleled growth. I know as we approach the 100th anniversary, the future is even brighter. But we have to realize that our students and our teachers are the fuel to the economic engine of Latvia's future. I can't wait to come back and see the next brief period of economic growth, and I thank you all for being such wonderful hosts. I know it will be great.